So I've noticed lately an emphasis on science and technology and a devaluation of the creative arts, especially in our education system. There's been tons of budget cuts, and the first to go are the arts, visual arts, and then music, drama. They all get cut, and there's been a movement in our ministry to something called integration of the arts, which I agree with to a point, because using creative arts to teach any other subject matter is actually a really powerful option. It's a really great way to learn. But what's resulted with integration of the arts is zero budget for the arts in primary grades. And the fact that the arts no longer have value in and of themselves. Like play, non-goal-oriented arts contributes to whole brain thinking, creates better problem solvers, and stimulates imagination and innovation, which Neil Gaiman found out when he went to China in 2007 for the very first ever party-approved science fiction and fantasy convention. And when Neil asked the party leaders how this all came about, the Chinese party was very open about it. They said that the Chinese are brilliant at making things from plans, from copying, from replicating, but they do not innovate. They do not invent or imagine. So they sent a delegation to the US, to Apple, Microsoft, and Google, to learn what creates innovation. And what they found was that creative thinkers and innovators read science fiction and fantasy. They role-played science fiction and fantasy. They were involved in the creative arts. They drew, they painted, they imagined, they idealized. They were at a very early age involved in creative thinking and creating, and which makes sense. Early and consistent practice helps build a muscle, any muscle. When you imagine, it helps you imagine. Imagining helps you imagine. Creative arts helps you be more creative. And creativity and imagination is what creates change and innovation. Microsoft has a fine art collection. They display it in their offices to, and I quote, humanize and energize the work environment. And displaying art to, and I quote, create an inspiring work environment that fosters creativity and innovation. Okay, Norio Oga, former president and chairman of Sony Corporation, and Steve Jobs, who you all know from Apple, understood that true technological innovation, you needed a mix of technology and the liberal arts. Steve Jobs, at a keynote at the Worldwide Developers Conference in 2011, said that creativity is a skill that needed to be nurtured and developed. He said, and I quote, this is Steve Jobs saying, "We're not just a tech company. Even though we invent some of the highest technology products in the world, it's the marriage of that plus the humanities and the arts that distinguishes Apple." Vivek Wadhwa, who's a visiting scholar at the University of California, Berkeley, a senior research associate at Harvard Law School, and director of research at the Center for Entrepreneurship and Research Commercialization at Duke University, says, "It's commonly believed that engineers dominate Silicon Valley and that there's a correlation between the capacity for innovation and an education in mathematics and the sciences. Both assumptions are false. Albert Einstein said, 'I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world.' Richard Feynman, who developed the theory of quantum thermodynamics, was a particle physicist and created Feynman diagrams. He also worked on the Manhattan Project, was also an artist and a painter and a sketcher, and played the bongo drums, and understood that he needed to develop an intuition about physics, that the math wasn't enough. Chemist Harry Kroto designed the first carbon-60 3D model from 2D data which developed our ability to create nanotube technology. And this was made possible through his first love, which is graphic design. Creative arts comes before technological advances. Creativity and the imagination create the possibility of science and technology. Niels Bohr helped to discover the principle of complementarity in quantum theory, that a particle and a wave both exist, that a photon is both a particle and a wave, by reading Du Cubism by Jean Metzinger and Albert Glaise. The reading of Cubism actually helped him to coalesce his ideas into a viable working model. Complementarity in quantum theory also influenced Werner Heisenberg and his uncertainty principle, that you can't know where a particle is and where it's going at the same time, which is directly related to the observer effect, which says that you cannot create an experiment in physics without impacting it. That really there's no such thing as an objective reality. It is all subjective. And I've always wondered, do we discover and understand the rules and mechanics of the world that already objectively exist? Or do we imagine what they could be and then develop the science to explain it? Quantum mechanics says that we imagine the world and then the quantum field creates it. And if that is the case, we need to promote creativity in play as soon as possible. We need to promote as one of the highest priorities non-goal-oriented experimentation and discovery. Imagination and fantasy are crucial to our future. We need to create a whole generation of human beings who can imagine a world and who will be able to innovate the technology that will change it, that will change the world. I know enough about physics to give this talk because a creative innovator made a comic about it. We're more likely to make intuitive and creative leaps to solve our energy crises and global warming problems when we practice creative thinking right from the start, when we value the creative arts. People like Matthew Inman are bringing a whole level of science understanding to a whole group of people through his comics. That's creative innovation. He's raised money. He's created money possible to make a Tesla museum through his interest and through his art. That's what the creative arts do for us. Math and science is important. Technology is important. I'm absolutely not saying they're not, but they're not first. Math doesn't create innovation. Science does not create innovation. They only give us the means to make real what the imagination and creativity make possible.